This is lecture 3 on urban transportation planning. In this lecture we will continue with the introduction part and try to complete the introduction part within this lecture. Before we proceed with lecture 3, let us recall what we did in the previous lecture. You may remember that we started our discussion about transportation system, the modes, different components of each of the modes, and then different steps involved in the development of each of the components. Then we discussed about the number of modes available for urban travel. We found that there are 9 different modes available for transportation in our cities and towns. Then we discussed about the modal characteristics and ranking of the different modes based on the user's point of view. Then we discussed about ranking of the different modes based on their characteristics, but in planner's point of view. Let us try to recollect few specific points on the previous lecture by posing these questions to us. Recapitulation of lecture 2. The first question is, what is study of transportation system about? Let me answer this question. Study of transportation system or comprehensive study of transportation system is the study of planning, evaluation, design, construction, operation and maintenance of all the components, namely the way, the vehicle, the terminal and the control concerned with all the 7 modes of transportation, namely highways, railways, airways, waterways, ropeways, pipelines and conveyors. This is how we can understand the comprehensive study of transportation system. I hope you will be able to answer this question, which is rather simple. The next question is, what are the major factors based on which travelers, the users of the different modes, rank the different modes of transport? You may recollect the ranking by the users is based on the technical and level of service characteristics of different modes. Could you identify these factors? Anybody?
It's basically the user point of view, the speed, the cost.
Please be louder.
The speed, the cost, the level of comforts, the accessibility and the terminal points.
Good. So these are the factors that are influencing the ranking of the different modes by the users. The speed of the different modes, the accessibility, level of accessibility to the different modes, cost implication with regard to each of the modes, and then level of comfort available in these modes. These are the factors that are influencing the ranking in their own perception by the users. The last question related to the previous lecture is this: what are the major modal characteristics which form the basis for ranking of the different modes of transport for the purpose of transportation system planning? Or in other words, in planner's point of view, how the different modes are ranked? Any response? Anybody? Planners rank the modes based on global factors like the environmental impact made by each of these modes, energy consumption implication by the different modes. The environmental impact was measured in terms of air pollution caused by different modes per passenger kilometer of travel, and energy consumption was also considered in terms of energy consumed per passenger kilometer, so that we have a common base for ranking of different modes for the purpose of planning. The ultimate objective is to plan for a sustainable transportation system which will consume least energy and protect the environment to the extent possible. Now, let us pass on to take an overview of the factors influencing travel demand. You may recall that I mentioned to you study of causal factors is a very important component of transportation system planning. In that context only we must look at this aspect of an overview of the factors influencing travel demand. The factors could be related to demographic and social aspects. The most important one is the population. More the population in an urban area, more will be the travel demand. Rather than the population, the planner should be concerned about the pattern of increase in population in urban areas to understand the possible changes in the demand for transportation. A next important factor is the household. What is household? For the time being, you can understand household as just family, even though it is not exactly family. For the time being, let us assume that household means family. Later on I will give you a precise definition about household. Now the question is how household influences the demand for transportation. Let us consider two cities, one city in a developing country, another city in developed country. Let us say the household size in the developing country is about 5, and the household size in the developed country is likely to be less or more? Less, let us say about 3.5. The population is going to be same, but if you work out the number of households based on the total population, you will end up with less number of households in the case of developing countries and more number of households in the case of developed countries for the same population. Simultaneously, we must remember that the mobility requirement for a household is based on the requirements of an independent household. So that way you can easily perceive that when you have more number of households, it is likely that we get more trips made in an urban area. Irrespective of the population, households also influence the travel demand. Next important factor is the age. Let us consider two similar cities. In one city, the average age of the community is higher than the average age of community in another city. Which city will have more intensity of travel, more demand for transportation? Same population, but average age is different. One city has higher average age, another city has relatively less average age.
It depends on like how do we classify as the higher age group, because let's say in case of if we talk about higher age group, let's say about 40,
yes,
they have the economic affluence to afford vehicles.
Yes.
Whereas the younger population of less than 20 years of age is likely to be engage in education.
I appreciate the point. We consider two cities of similar economic characteristics, let us say. Still age will play an important role. The city which has got average age being higher will have more of elderly people whose mobility will be relatively less compared to younger and middle aged group of people. So that is how we must understand the influence of age on demand for transportation. In developed countries now, the concern is higher level of average age. That is really telling on the overall productivity of the nation itself, apart from other aspects like travel demand and so on. So average age of a community plays a vital role in various aspects related to the overall development as well as demand for transportation in a city or a country. Okay. And lastly, cultural aspects. You may agree that cultural aspects are closely related to the activity pattern of households. It may have historical connections, and the activity pattern is closely related to the travel demand. So that is how we need to understand cultural aspects also have a very important role to play in influencing the demand for transportation in urban areas. So as planners, we should try to understand the influence of these aspects, the major factors, in their right perspectives. Let us have now a closer look at the first aspect of population in respect of our country, India. Let us see how population has changed right from 1901 to 2011 in our country. This was the population in 1901 in India. Population in million, you can see the urban population, which is shown in green color, is very small compared to the total population as well as rural population. This scenario did not change much even in the subsequent decade in the year 1911. It was almost same. There was no change in the proportion of urban population with respect to the total. If we move forward to 1921, we find that there is no significant change. The same story even in the year 1931, not much of change as far as the proportion of urban population with respect to the total. In 1941, we find still the picture is not very much different compared to the previous trend. Whereas in 1951 there is some change. You can see increased height for the green bar. Obviously 1951 is the free India condition. Earlier India was a British colony and social setup did not change much. After freedom, we find that there is some kind of mobility from rural area to urban area, resulting in higher percentage of urban population, and this trend continued subsequently. This was the scenario in 1961. This is what happened in the subsequent decade. In the year 1971, you can see a significant increase in urban population. 1981 picture is much better compared to the previous cases, increase in urban population. 1991 also follows the same trend. 2001 you can see a significant increase in urban population, and now in 2011 this is the scenario. The present total population of India is 1.2 billion as per the recent census record, and there is a significant increase in the proportion of urban population. Let us take a closer look at the growth of urban population in our country in respect of the past decade, right. This is the trend or the proportion of urban population and the rural population. In 2001, urban population constitutes about 27.82% and the rural population was just 72.18%. What has happened in 2011? There is a significant increase in the urban population, the percentage being 31.16 and the rural population constitutes 68.84%. Now my question is, how this happens? Is it because the population growth of urban dwellers is more? Is it indigenously generated in urban areas or due to some other factor? How the population of our cities and towns increase? That is the point. There is a significant migration of rural population to urban areas to take advantage of better employment opportunities available in urban areas, better educational opportunities available in urban areas, better health facilities available in urban areas and so on. So it is mainly due to migratory process. Our cities and towns are growing at a very fast rate. This indicates that in the near future the economic development of most of the countries are going to be decided by the rate of development of the urban areas. The urban areas are going to be really engines of economic development of any country. That is the trend. That should be understood very clearly, and this fact has been reinforced by a recent study by United Nations organization. This statistic is produced by the Population Statistics Department of UNO. They have given information about urban and rural population for the years 2003 and 2030. At the global level, they have also given the breakup for developed countries as well as developed and least developed countries. Okay. For example, if you take the world scenario for the whole world, the urban population in 2003 was 3.044 billion. In 2030 it is expected to change to 4.945 billion. Similarly, rural population will decrease from 3.258 in 2003 to 3.185 in 2030. The corresponding percentages are 48.3% of the whole world will be living in urban, has lived in urban area in 2003, and it is going to be nearly 61% in 2030. 61% of the whole world is going to live in urban areas in the near future, right. And the scenario in the case of more developed regions is very interesting. If you look at the percentages, in 2003 74.5% of the people in highly developed countries already lived in urban areas, and it is going to be 81.7% in 2030. Can imagine, just around 19 or 18% of people will be living in rural areas, supporting the rural economy like agriculture and so on. And if you look at the scenario in case of less developed regions, the percentage in respect of 2003 is 42.1 and it is going to be 57.1% in 2030. And for least developed regions it will be 43.3% in 2030 and it was 26.6% in 2003. India comes under which category? Less developed regions or least developed regions? You can identify based on the already available data in respect of India. In 2001, what is the percentage of urban population in India? It is about 27%. It is very close to the percentage given here in respect of least developed regions. We can say that India lies in between less developed regions and least developed regions category as far as this statistic is concerned. Okay. And based on this statistic, can you just extrapolate the percentage of urban population that is likely to be in India in the year 2030? Optimistic estimate is about 50%, pessimistic could be around 45%. It is going to range between 45 to 50% of Indians will be living in cities and towns in the year 2030. It is a very important factor which is going to have significant influence in the overall economic development as well as the infrastructure needs of the cities and towns in India. Let us have a closer look at the population statistics for one city, namely the city of Chennai. This is based on a recent comprehensive transportation study done for this city and completed in the year August 2010, last year it was completed. This is the population growth scenario for one urban area, namely Chennai city. You can see that the population value for the year 2008 is given as 8.26 million and it is predicted to be about 12.58 million in the year 2026. You can assume the current population to be around 10 million for Chennai city approximately, and this implies that if you compare the population in 1971, it has almost more than tripled in about 5 decades. That is the rate at which population is growing in our metropolitan cities. Chennai is one of the metropolitan cities, jumbo cities in our country, 4th largest city in India. Then let us look at the economic factors that may have influence on the demand for transportation. What are the possible economic factors that might influence travel demand? Any suggestion? Economic factors? The most important one is employment. More the employees in a society, more will be the demand for transportation, at least for work trips and related activities. Or in other words, when you have more employees per household, there will be more demand for transportation. Another related economic factor is the income itself. More the income, more will be the demand for transportation, mainly because the increase of income might result in higher proportion of disposable income. What do you understand by disposable income? Any family will have some basic needs like food, shelter, clothing and so on. So they have to spend some money to meet these basic needs. Then whether it is individual or a family or a community, there will be never ending wants by the people. Need is different from want. So disposable income is made use of to satisfy your wants. Whatever you want you can afford to, you can try to buy using your disposable income. So when the income increases there is a flexibility and the wants of the people increases, which generates more trips for various activities. Then vehicle ownership. When you have vehicle available to you, it is easy to make trips, and the ease with which people make trip motivate them to make more trips. Let us say for example the workplace for a person is at a distance of about 3 kilometers from home. If the person is using public transit to go to work from home, most probably he or she will carry lunch also to work, have her lunch in the office itself and return home only in the evening. If the person wants a motorized vehicle like two-wheeler or car, he or she may be tempted to come home for lunch too. It is possible to come back quickly, have a hot lunch and then go back for work. So that is how vehicle ownership encourages people to make more trips for different activities. In this particular case, if we find that the number of trips simply gets doubled, 2 trips become 4 trips because vehicle is available. That is how vehicle ownership has very important bearing on the demand for transportation. Let us look at what has happened to the growth of motor vehicles in our country in the recent past, covering the period from 1995 to 2004. The source for this information is the website of the Ministry of Transport and Highways, Government of India. In 1995, this was the total number of registered motor vehicles in our country. In thousands, it works out to 30,295, and it was increasing. Then on, it became 33,786 in the year 1996, and then 41,000 plus 1999 value was 44,000 plus, and in 2000 it was 48,000 or nearly 49,000. 2001 54,991, 2002 58,924, 2003 67,000. You can see the rate of increase is very steep in the recent past. Then 72,718 in 2004. What is the likely number of motor vehicles in our country today in 2011 in thousands? 72 in 2004. Any guess? 100,000 minimum, isn't it? But it is a very pessimistic estimate. In my opinion, it might have already touched 200,000. We are talking about 2011, 2004 to 2011, 7 years later. The rate of growth of motor vehicles is very steep. It could be around 200,000. I do not have the exact statistics provided by this ministry, they have not updated, and you can guess it is going to be nearly 200,000 motor vehicles of all categories together, including heavy vehicles, light vehicles, motorized two-wheelers all together. Let us have a closer look at the same aspect with regard to this particular city. Growth of vehicle population in Chennai city category wise, that throws better light into the impact of vehicle growth on travel demand. 3 categories are shown here: two-wheelers, cars and total vehicles, right. It is from 1992 to 2009. You can see that there is a steep increase in the rate of growth of motorized two-wheelers, isn't it? in thousands, what is the total number of two wheelers in 2009? It is nearly 1,800,000, nearly 1,800 against the total of 2000 plus. Cars have touched almost 500, right, and this is how the vehicle ownership is increasing in a particular urban area. Please remember, the vehicle ownership is totally different in respect of urban areas compared to rural areas. We have relatively low vehicle ownership in rural areas compared to cities and towns. And let us extend this idea to understand the ownership of vehicles by households. That will give a better picture about the mobility capability of members of a household in a city or town. This pertains to Chennai city. In the period between 1992 and 1995, if you look at the car ownership, it is negligible, almost close to zero. This is vehicle ownership per household for one family, and two wheeler ownership, as you could see, had been about 0.05 two wheeler per household. This means that there are one two wheeler for every 20 households. If you look at the bicycle ownership, it had been about 0.1 bicycle per household. This implies that during that time there had been one bicycle for every 10 household, right. Now in 2008, you can see that car ownership is 0.1 car per household, isn't it? That means there is one car available for every 10 household, isn't it? There is one car for every 10 household in 2008 in Chennai city. And motorized two wheelers, the value is nearly 0.9, let us say, right. So it is very high compared to the value of car ownership, nearly 9 times the car ownership. Bicycle ownership has only marginally increased to touch 0.3. And what is the likely car ownership in developed countries? Or before that, can you extend this statistics to get the number of cars per 1000 population in our country? For 2008 level, car ownership is 0.1 car per family, or 1 car for every 10 families. Let us say the family size is approximately 5 persons. That means there will be 1 car available for every 50 persons, and for 1000 population approximately 20 cars per 1000 population. That is the car ownership in India in the year 2008, and it is not going to be different now, maybe slightly more than the value of 2008. What is the likely car ownership in developed countries? Cities of developed countries. Yeah, your estimate is underestimate. The car ownership is approximately 500 cars for every 1000 population. Every alternate individual is owning a car. So it is a comparison of 20 against 500. and we think of the traffic problems in our country. Even now we find our roads are full of cars with such a low car ownership of just 20 cars per 1000 population. Why it is so?
Density of population.
Yeah, the numbers speak. Even though percentages, the proportions are less, the population is more. That is how we just feel the pinch on any infrastructure that is being developed to meet the demand for transportation. Let us try to understand the trip rate for the same city, Chennai city, based on the same study done in 2010. Of course, they have looked into the past trend also. You can see that PCTR, per capita trip rate, the average number of trips made by any individual per day is per capita trip rate. There could be individuals making several trips, 5 trips, 6 trips. There could be individuals making 0 trips, all taken together, and the average is given here. Okay. It was nearly 0.8 trips per head per day in 1971. Then it rose to nearly 1.2 in 1984, and it was, let us say, 1.3 in 1995, and it is 1.6 in 2008. Currently it may be slightly more than 1.6, maybe 1.65 or 1.7 trips per head per day. Is it a high level of mobility? Please understand, by definition here, trip means one way movement from an origin to a destination. Based on this definition, the trip rate is 1.6. What is the likely trip rate, per capita trip rate in developed countries? Could you guess?
2.5.
Underestimate, that is overestimate. It is around 3.5 trips per head per day. Why it is so high in developed countries? Vehicle ownership is the only reason, is it? Road conditions, income. Altogether you can say that higher level of socio-economic activities leads to increased mobility in developed societies compared to what is happening in developing countries. Okay. So please understand, in spite of such a low mobility level of just 1.6 trips per head per day, in spite of low car ownership, we are unable to manage our traffic. Please understand that we are developing at a very fast rate. Our car ownership is increasing exponentially. Motor vehicle ownership is increasing exponentially. Our economic status is increasing. Our disposable income is increasing. All these factors will lead to increased mobility of individuals both in urban as well as rural areas. How are we going to meet the demand for transportation in the near future? It is a really haunting task, it is not that easy. So it is a challenge to provide adequate transportation infrastructure to meet the future travel demand in our country. There is going to be a major diversion of resources towards development of transportation infrastructure in this country. The next few decades, 2-3 decades, is going to be only transportation, transportation and transportation, covering all the modes: highways, railways, airways and waterways. That is how we can manage the demand, growing demand for transportation in our country. And this means there is going to be enormous opportunity for transportation engineers for their career development, better opportunities job. There is going to be a shortage of transportation engineers in the near future in our country. Now let us see the effect of the influencing factors on travel pattern over a period of time. This will be discussed based on a series of plots made based on the experience of developed countries. They have already observed how each of these factors have changed over a period of time, and the time here is taken along x axis and change in various factors is taken along y axis. That is what is shown at the right hand bottom corner to you for reference. Later on this will not be shown for each and every graph, because we are going to show a number of smaller plots covering the whole slide. Let us start with one factor, trips per capita, about which just now we discussed. What is the historical development of trips per capita? This is what has happened in the past in developed countries. Trips per capita were very high initially with males and increased at a particular rate. In respect of female, it was relatively less to start with and then picked up fast, and almost now it is on par with male. There is no distinction in respect of mobility between male and female in developed countries as of now. And household vehicle ownership changed following this pattern. Initially there were quite a good number of households with no vehicles, zero vehicle owning households. Then over a period of time that was decreasing faster, touched almost the x axis, making that every household owns a house. Subsequently it was observed that even households with ownership of one vehicle started decreasing. Many households started buying more than one vehicle. You can see a decreasing trend shown here for vehicle ownership 1, but little flatter compared to zero vehicle ownership. And there had been increasing trend of households with two vehicles on top. You can see more number of households with two vehicles, and there were households with three vehicles too, 3 cars, right. This is the trend experienced in developed countries. Please remember, it is going to be the trend in our country in the near future. Even now there are quite a good number of households owning 2 cars, more than 1 car in metropolitan cities, and the trend is going to continue, and no wonder that we also go through a similar trend in the near future. And this leads to what? This leads to increased number of people learning driving, owning driving license, and this is what happened in developed countries. Initially lot of males only owned driving license, and that increased. Very few females were driving, and later on both were almost on par, like female male there is no difference in driving license ownership. Let us look at what has happened in persons per household or household size, or let us say in general family size. This is the trend observed. There was a gradual decrease in the size of the household. Why should it happen? This does not mean that there is a decrease in the whole population, only household size is decreasing, the size of family decreased. What could be the reason? Yes, individual family concept, fine, nucleus, okay. And what could be the motivating factor for families becoming smaller and smaller? Yes, obviously economic prosperity brings in independence and more weightage for independence, privacy and so on. All these factors leads to smaller families, right. When you have joint families, you cannot be that independent, that private. So when you have economic independence, the family size decreases. This trend is noticed in urban areas right now in our country. You would have heard about families breaking away, getting into smaller groups because they want to be independent, right. So this trend will be reflected shortly in our country too. Then population, mainly the spread of population over urban space. What happened is this: the population growth in suburbs increased at a steep rate compared to population growth, which remained almost static in central part of the city. This will have an impact on the travel pattern as well as demand for transportation. Why it might have happened? Obviously because of want of space, one thing, and people looking for better living environment, right, more living space and so on, which may not be available in the city center. And the environment might be much better in terms of air pollution, noise level, etc. in suburbs compared to city center. That is how there is just movement of families from city center to suburbs. Employment obviously followed the same pattern. More employment centers got developed in suburbs because they also could not afford to rent out buildings at reasonable rent in city center. That is one reason, and they had to follow the trend of population spread. So this is what happened in the past in developed countries, and this is already happening in our country too in major metropolitan cities. And this spread will lead to obviously increase in person trip length. Still they may have workplaces mostly in the city center, and they will be driving longer distances, resulting in increased trip length. And again comparison of male female, the similar trend. And let us see what will be the combined effect of all these together, taking into account increase in per capita trip rate and reduction in household size and spread of urban population towards suburbs, as well as the increase in trip length. All together will result in increased person kilometer travelled. If we measure the travel intensity in terms of person kilometers, there will be a significant increase. As planners, we are interested to measure the travel intensity in terms of person kilometers first, and then convert the intensity into vehicle kilometers based on the modal split. The trend is going to be like this. There will be steady increase of trips in terms of person kilometers. There are other factors too. For example, increased driving license, increased person kilometers will lead to a mode use or mode choice as shown here. Since many people are driving, since person kilometer is increasing, there is going to be more and more of car usage and significant decrease in the use of other modes. This is what happened in most cities of developed countries. They are fighting hard to bring people from car to public transit. It is not working successfully so far. Then let us say unfortunately the cost of cars is also decreasing due to some reason, maybe healthy competition and so on. This will add oil to the fire, okay. This will add to the increase in car usage. This has happened in several cities around the world. The competition led to reduced price of car, giving loans for purchase of cars and so on. Again, all these things will lead to increased usage of personal vehicle. Added to that, car occupancy decreases, less and less number of people in car, only one person driving a huge car because they can afford to own. And let us see the combined effect of all. Person trip length increase will lead to obviously vehicle trip length increase. There is decrease in car occupancy and increase in vehicle trip length. All these things will result in one aspect, namely increased travel in terms of vehicle kilometer. That is what we see realize on our roads. So this is how we must try to relate the causal factors to the traffic scenario that we observe on our roads. Any question on this particular flow chart? This is a comprehensive presentation of various factors that influence the travel demand and the resulting traffic that we observe on the road, right. So this is not the end of the story. Total travel in vehicle kilometer is known to us, but this travel is a complex commodity. The total travel demand in terms of vehicle kilometer you can measure, that is fine. How to meet this demand? This demand is spread over time and space. Each individual is travelling from a particular origin to a particular destination at a particular point of time. If you take for example the traffic pattern for work, this is what happens. We find there is a very high traffic movement in the morning peak falling between let us say 7:30 and 10:30 am, very high demand. Similarly during evening peak, say between 5:30 and 7:30, again it picks up. So this temporal variation in demand for transportation creates a lot of difficulty in transport system management. If you allow all the vehicles to meet or to go towards the workplaces, then during return trips all the vehicles will be returning empty. So we must find some way out to effectively make use of the available fleet of transit system, simultaneously see that the demand is met as per the desire of the people, which is spread unfortunately over time as well as space. To summarize today's discussion, we started our discussion in understanding the factors that influence the demand for transportation, particularly in urban areas. First we discussed about demographic and social factors that influence the demand for transportation, starting from population, household, then age of the population and cultural background of the population. Then we discussed about economic factors that influence the demand for transportation, starting from employment, income and vehicle ownership. And finally we took a overview of all the factors put together and found that all these factors have their own contribution towards increased vehicle kilometer that we observe on city roads, and meeting this demand is a challenge because this demand is spread over space and time. With this we will conclude our discussion in this lecture. We will proceed with the rest of it in the next lecture.